Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and this episode is sponsored by Squarespace. Like the Supremacy, it's basically a one-stop shop, but for creating online stores and websites which have marketing tools and analytics, not for squashing resistance movements. Although that also looks like a lot of fun. Stay tuned until the end of this episode if you want to learn more about Squarespace. Also, you can use our code GenerationTech, one word, on their website if you want to save 10% on your next purchase. When the First Order was first established out of the ashes of the Empire, it called the unknown region home, an area of the galaxy that was sparsely populated because of the shattered hyperspace lanes and gravitational anomalies that littered the entire region. Simply put, traveling from one system to another was not only very dangerous, it also took a lot of time. But even as the First Order started to spread and grow their empire in the unknown region, they still kept their capital mobile. This is because of two reasons. First, there was the constant fear that the New Republic would stumble upon their war factories and shipyards and renew hostilities before the First Order was ready for a fight. The second reason was that although the unknown region was now their temporary home, they had no plans on staying there. They knew that they would one day return to the more populated parts of the galaxy. You know, the portions of the galaxy that they believed they rightfully owned. So mobile capital makes it a lot easier to move base. The Supremacy wasn't just the flagship though, it represented the entire hope of the First Order's dream for galactic-wide control and order. And today we'll be looking at 10 features of the Supremacy that really sets it out in a class of its own. No ship should be able to survive a collision with a massive Mon Cala cruiser at hyperspace speeds, but the Supremacy did. Well, it was sheared in half by the force of the blow, and it definitely caused quite a lot of damage, but the ship remained functional and most likely recoverable, although the First Order did decide to scuttle it. Rest assured, one day we will return to this sector of space, which now is basically a First Order graveyard, and go on a new adventure where we explore the dead husk of the Supremacy. It's gonna happen. If you listen closely, you might even hear a pissed off Phantom Snow yelling at you. Anyway, the Supremacy was a mega-class star dreadnought. This means it had a length of 13.2 kilometers or 18.2 miles, making it a bit shorter than the 19 kilometer or 11.8 miles Executor-class Superstar Destroyer. But because of the Supremacy's shape, its width was a whopping 60.5 kilometers or 37.6 miles. A ship of this size, for reference, would be able to cover a good portion of LA. The reason for the size actually fits into a very simple philosophy, one that we actually practice here on American highways, and it's the bigger you are, the safer the passengers will be. So what do you fit inside of a ship-sized city? Well, ship-sized amenities. Now, something that the Supremacy has that we've never seen in a Star Wars ship before is a fully functioning shipyard along with factories, processing centers, warehouses, and full city blocks of residential neighborhoods to house workers and whatever else you need to build an entire armada. Supremacies had countless tethers and docks for ships of all sorts of sizes, both on its surface and inside. But it also had 8 massive docks, 2 externally and 6 internally, that could fully house a Resurgent-class Star Destroyer, the primary flagship used in most standard First Order fleets. Derived from the Imperial-class Star Destroyer designs, this impressive upgrade in ship design fixed many of the problems from the Imperial era and was 3 kilometers long, or almost twice as long as the original Imperial class. Still, a ship of this size can fit in one of the hangars inside the Supremacy for a refit, repair, or even upgrade. The Supremacy could also build its own ship all the way from the design phase to the fabrication point with very little outside help. This is because on board the Supremacy you had an extremely robust working industrial system, which included numerous R&D labs that researched not only ship designs, but also weapons and other new tech. There were also huge warehouses full of raw materials, including a large asteroid mining complex that harvested material sucked into the ships when it flew near asteroid fields. There are also 8 different Durasteel foundries, along with state-of-the-art automated production lines. 8 different droid manufacturing facilities produce massive amounts of automated units that help maintain and run the ship. At the tip of the wings, you could find comm stations and a space reserved for top-secret labs and extremely dangerous weapon testing, all of which was connected by an integrated tram system. The Supremacy could create anything, from light bulbs for the elevators on board to blasters carried by their stormtroopers to starfighters, walkers, and even star dreadnoughts. This ship had an industrial capability that could probably rival planets as large as Corellia. And along with those industrial capabilities, the Supremacy also brought along enough military personnel to wage an entire war. enough soldiers for numerous armies, and enough flight crew for several fleets. In total, the ship was crewed by over 2,225,000 personnel, including officers, stormtroopers, gunners, engineers, pilots, workers, and specialists. Similar to the Supremacy's shipbuilding abilities, the Supremacy also had a training pipeline for officers and entire combat units. And a good percentage of the ship was actually full of younger cadets who were in training and not yet ready for combat duty. There are also 10 huge military staging areas that could each fit around 35,000 stormtroopers. There are also training centers and academies that could indoctrinate and train soldiers at all different levels. You really haven't colonized or defeated a planet until you can walk around without any breathing apparatus or fear the local fauna. Space can be even more difficult to conquer. But the Supremacy, with all the facilities I just mentioned, along with an impressive utility system that provides and transports water, food, and electricity throughout the ship, was basically able to travel and sustain life in space for really long periods of time. Organic matter could be absorbed from nearby planets and synthesized into food. The First Order Stormtroopers were famously known for their terrible protein blocks and really terrible tasting protein shakes. Any raw material needed for repairs or upgrades to the ship and its various systems could also be harvested and refined and then manufactured aboard. There are also several medical centers, schools, and other facilities you would need to create a healthy society. If I were going to brave the cold expanse of space between galaxies and I could only choose one ship, the Supremacy might be it. The firepower that the Supremacy could vomit out was also quite impressive. It had thousands of heavy turbo lasers along with thousands of anti-ship missile batteries useful against more nimble starfighters, thousands of heavy ion cannons, and tractor beam projectors which can disable a ship and then help drag it in. And at the very tip of the ship were an additional 10 super heavy turbo laser towers. There's just no surviving a hostile encounter with this city-sized weapons platform. Unless you bring a Death Star, or, well, ram it at hyperspeed. What's more impressive was the fact that General Hux was able to design a hyperspace tracker that is basically able to determine where a ship is jumping to with very small margins of error. This wasn't due to some advanced new technology or some kind of creative engineering or design. It was done by sheer computing power. We actually did an entire episode on how hyperspace tracking works in case you are curious. Basically, in classic First Order fashion, they use brute force to figure out where the ship is going, and by brute force, I mean a huge supercomputer capable of running trillions of different scenarios by cross-referencing potential pathways and jumps with centuries of ship logs, combat logs, and other hyperspace lane records. The machine itself is located in the center of a static hyperspace field, which allows the machine to further boost its processing power. The science is definitely nonsense and very questionable. But apparently this method had been researched since the Galactic Empire days and was initially funded as a part of Tarkin's initiative. With this hyperspace track, no one, including the Resistance, can outrun the First Order's wrath. I generally think bridges with massive panoramic views are a bit stupid for space travel, mainly because windows, even if they are made of reinforced transparent steel, will present a weak spot in the hull and a visual aid for incoming bombers to attack. And unlike on Earth, a hull breach in space means being blasted into vacuum, which is pretty terrible. Sensors and cameras that can feed a hidden bridge information is a really good replacement for a bridge with a visible viewport. But if you are going to go with that romantic viewport, might as well have full coverage, which is exactly what the Supremacy's main overbridge has, a 360 view of the ship and its surroundings. In many ways, this is not just a control bridge, but a looming tower that looks over a massive city. Even after the catastrophic damage done by Admiral Holdo's hyperspace smash, the Supremacy miraculously still had power, and that's due to the fact that there are 6 fusion reactor complexes aboard the ship that create a very resilient and redundant energy system. This massive amount of power is redirected through the ship and also powers 32 massive sublight engines. The Imperial-class Star Destroyer in many ways was one of the first Star Destroyers in the current era to push forward this idea of creating a forward operations base on a mobile platform like a Star Destroyer, instead of setting up a prefab base on a planet. An Imperial-class Star Destroyer with its legions of stormtroopers and military equipment could serve as a forward operation base either in orbit or even closer to the surface. As an FOB, the Imperial-class Star Destroyer had all the medical and repair facilities, including housing, that an army could actually need, along with tons and tons of weapons and shields to protect it. Better yet, it could also pack up its operations relatively quickly and then go off to another system if need be. With the Supremacy and its massive amount of resources, including possibly Resurgent-class Star Destroyers inside of it, we don't just have a simple FOB, but the military capability of an entire nation all in one place. When the Supremacy shows up in a new system, not only does it control the entire region around it, it actually can start a new front in a galactic-wide struggle. The Supremacy doesn't just start battles, it starts entire wars. The fact that it's equipped with a hyperdrive also makes it fast enough to keep the enemy guessing and confused if necessary. So those are 10 crazy features that really put the Supremacy in a class of its own. Anyway, thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Squarespace is the go-to place for creating your own personalized website or online store. You don't need any experience in website building or design because they have an assortment of beautiful and modern templates for you to choose from that are very easy to modify. But just in case, they do have award-winning 24/7 customer service via live chat and email. Once you're done with your website, Squarespace also has a plethora of marketing tools to optimize traffic. But don't just listen to me talking about Squarespace, visit their website, which we'll link in the description down below, and start a free trial. Also, if you do end up purchasing anything, don't forget to use the 10% discount code GenerationTech. One word and written like you're screaming it at someone. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.